Lately, we've been talking about the Ahamkara. What most don't know is that the Cabal under Caiatl have as well with Lord Saladin. Two new cards this season detail arguments between Cabal and Saladin about the future of these creatures. The banter is normal until a psion steps in and shows them some visions. In the first card from the Dragon Slayer's lorebook, Valis Forge's prologue, Caiatl's administrators argue about how to use their forces to establish authority or to support other Cabal groups that are sectioned off in the system. Saladin steps in and gives his opinion. "We need not these local administrations as challenges to the Empress's rule," Councillor Talrun said to the assembled War Council. "In truth, they may be keeping the whole fleet from descending into anarchy." "I don't give a warbeast turd if they are," sneered Valis Thalrog. "This is treason. We should dispatch a legion to establish order." A murmur of agreement bubbled up from the assembled Cabal commanders. Empress Caiatl regarded the handful of holographic blips hanging over the council table. They represented refugees from her sundered world, adrift on massive starships in deep space, the remainder of their entire civilization reduced to digital specks. "And what you say, Valis Saladin?" the Empress asked. "We have a saying on Earth," the Iron Lord replied. "There are two ways to move a warbeast, with a chunk of flesh and with your fist. The situation calls for both." The assorted commanders grunted in assent. "So it shall be," the Empress declared. "Talrun, dispatch a shipment of goods immediately with all luxuries included. If conservation of resources is the pretext for their authority, let us remove it. Valis Thalrog," she continued, "you shall be my fist. Send an echelon to guard the shipment from fallen raiders. Reassert my authority in no uncertain terms." The Empress stamped her foot lightly on the ship's deck. The matter was settled. "Very well," Talrun said. "Our next item is—" The counselor stopped mid-sentence, interrupted by a pleasant ringing octave that seemed to come from inside her own head. Everyone in the council perked up. They heard it too. They turned their attention to the closed doorway. "Optis Coryx," the Empress said, her voice laced with concern. The telepathic tone dissipated. The psion entered, her lone eye unshielded by a helmet. Gradually, a series of images bloomed in the council's imagination. The Witness, Portal, Savathun, Eris Morn, Wishing Wall, Spire, Eggs, Ahamkara, Riven. The room was gripped by tense silence. Caiatl had avoided bringing up the Witness thus far because, despite their best efforts, the Cabal were helpless to breach the portal. The Empress knew that the resulting feeling of impotence made her commanders rash. They were ill-accustomed to dread. At least now they had a path forward. "The Vanguard has a habit of playing with forces they cannot hope to control," Councillor Thalrog muttered. "The proof that we're resurrecting the Ahamkara at all is proof that they can be controlled," Saladin replied coolly. "Or at least, eliminated." "Ah," the Empress said, "your famed Great Hunt. If I recall the Mythkeeper Ashtia's lessons, you were integral to their extinction. Is that so?" "It is," Saladin replied with reluctance. "The Ahamkara were deemed too dangerous to live, so we killed them." Valis Thalrog shrugged impatiently. "The Cabal would have done the same." "You would have tried," Saladin fired back sternly, "and failed. Among the Cabal, only the psions truly understand the anthem anatheme. The rest of you would have ended up in prisons of your own making." "There is nothing the Cabal cannot conquer, with or without the psions," Caiatl shot back. "You would do well to remember that, Lord Saladin." Saladin weighted his strategic position. "Of course, Empress," he deferred. "My apologies." Caiatl pushed forward. "Tell us some tales of these wish dragons. We would be wise to study our foe." Saladin sighed inwardly. This was not a period of history he gladly recounted. "As you wish." So the Cabal are having their own issues at the moment. Empress Caiatl considered the plight of her civilization, now reduced to these refugees in space, decides on a dual approach, sending both aid suggesting by Talrun and military support by Tharag. This would be used to assert her authority and also maintain order. The conversation gets interesting when they switch to the Witness and the Ahamkara. The Psion steps in, shows the council these images in their mind and the true threat that the Cabal still face, which is the big bad Witness. They argue about Ahamkara and their powers with Saladin, and Caiatl wants to learn more about these creatures. There's some other interesting cards in this lore book, the Iron Lord's Tale, which talks about Lord Temur, some other Iron Lords hunting Ahamkara, and even Albios, which we talked about in a recent video. But at the end, we see Valis Forge's epilogue, which continues from the lore card we just read. As Saladin finished his final tale, he shook his head regretfully. He'd been foolish to think that the Wish Dragons were gone for good. If the past had taught him anything, it was that all things repeat in time. Empress Caiatl broke the War Council's contemplative silence. Valis Forge, you said that among the Cabal, only the Psions can truly understand these dragons. As much as anyone can, Saladin replied. Then Optis Coryx shall give her opinion on the matter, she declared. All eyes turned to the slight Psion sitting motionless at the edge of the room. The Optis stood, her head barely clearing the tabletop. The Y-shaped pupil of her eye dilated and the palpitating of her milky facial skin slowed. Within the minds of the council members, the room seemed to dim and warm. A pleasant hum began to emanate from the walls. After a relaxing moment, a series of images surfaced in their minds. Cabal Fleet, Ahamkara, Shackles, Psion Officer, Mindscape, Goblet, Godthought, Oxa Shackles Break, New Tor Bottle, Psion's Throne. The vision faded, and the cold steel of Caiatl's flagship closed in around them once more. Valis Tharag stood up boldly. This traitor openly imagines herself on the throne, he bellowed. We should... His screed was interrupted by a spike of psychic feedback, like a momentary migraine. Everyone was immediately slammed into another vision sequence. Cabal Fleet, Ahamkara, Shackles, Valis Tharag, Bargain, Mars, Hive corpses burning, fallen corpses floating in space, human corpses buried in rubble, Cabal corpses hanging, Emperor Tharag. Tharag sagged back into his seat, stunned. The Optis struggled back to her chair and placed a small piece of moist cloth over her exposed eye. Empress Caiatl swallowed hard as if fighting back nausea. Your point is made, Optis. And what point is that exactly? Asked Tharag, his hands on his forehead. That we're all traitors in waiting? Exactly, Saladin calmly replied. It doesn't matter who wishes for what, or how well-meaning they are. Optis Coryx understands that the Ahamkara feed off unintended consequences. That's why we started the Great Hunt in the first place. It wasn't that we couldn't trust the Ahamkara, it was that we couldn't trust ourselves. You are not Cabal, Tharag fired back. Empress Caiatl held up her massive hand for silence. The Optis' visions remind me of the former Evocid General. Umun Arath thought she could control Hive magic to our benefit, and it cost us our homeworld. Let us not fall into the same trap again. We will not attempt to capture the Ahamkara alive. Caiatl stamped her foot on the ship's deck. It was decreed. Unfortunately, she continued, we must also protect ourselves from those who lack our forbearance. Once the Witness is dealt with, the Ahamkara should return to extinction. If there is to be another great hunt, the Cabal will support it. She stamped her foot at the floor once again before standing up. The council was adjourned. As the rest of the commanders filed out, Caiatl paused near Valis Forge. I know you regret the harshness of the Great Hunt and long for another solution, the Empress said. But even with the benefit of hindsight, do you see another way? Saladin shook his head in resignation. If the past had taught him anything, it was that all things repeat in time. So Caiatl was curious about the Ahamkara, but after Saladin's stories and the Scion's thoughts, she sees how terrible they can be. Her council does too. The Scion showed them what would happen if their desires became reality. Each of them had different thoughts and paths, even the Scion who saw itself as the head of the Cabal Empire. Empress Caiatl concludes the council by rejecting the idea of trying to control or ally with the Ahamkara, drawing a parallel to past disasters where similar attempts to harness uncontrollable powers led to ruin. She decrees that the Ahamkara should be exterminated once the immediate threat of the witness is addressed, acknowledging the need for a collective effort in what might become a second Great Hunt. So that is interesting. There's now contrasting beliefs. You have the Cabal here in Saladin who might want to hunt the creatures again to extinction, and on the other side you have maybe our Guardian, but more importantly Marisov and the Awoken, who now trust in the Ahamkara after Riven and Taranis' story. See that not all of them can be deceitful like Riven was, they can be like Taranis, new Ahamkara, and Mara can raise them that way. So I'm not sure if some type of dragon episode would release in the future, or maybe they just contain it to lore cards, but that's where we are with the Cabal and Saladin.
I will honor you. You demand a life for a life. Take mine.
Cabal reward bravery in the face of death. I accept. Your life is forfeit. You will serve the rest of your days on my war council as Brachus Forge.
Then it's done. Zavala, you can't not a word.
If you'd like to see some more Destiny lore and mysteries just like this video, please be sure to subscribe to the channel. I thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next video.